Why is a dead vampire scarier than a living one? How did pharaohs become heroes in Ukrainian mythology? Which craftsmen were considered wizards? And why is it so difficult to obtain the fern flower? Hello, I'm Nick Lysytsky. This is Encyclopedia of Ukrainian Mythology, a show about incredible characters and extraordinary phenomena. And the heroes of today's episode are upyr, pharaohs, chymarodnik, and the fern flower. Upyr, a mythical creature with an insatiable thirst for human blood. In Ukraine, the legends of the upyrs predates Bram Stoker's Dracula and the popularization of vampires in modern culture, with mentions of these creatures dating back to as early as the 12th century in historical chronicles. Ukrainian upyrs differ significantly in appearance from the typical vampire image. They are described as having red faces, dual hearts, tails, and both male and female reproductive organs. According to Ukrainian folklore, upyrs can be not only the deceased but also living people. Living upyrs, in addition to their distinctive red faces, are characterized by a robust physique, as they are believed to bear the weight of the deceased upyrs on their shoulders. One can become an upyr from birth either as the seventh male child in a family or when one's parents deviate from certain established norms. Witchers, who control witches, and so-called two-hearted sorcerers, who leave their body using a second soul to harm people, can also become upyrs. Legends attribute these upyrs with the ability to induce storms, droughts, famine, cholera, and plague. A living upyr continues to exist until another is born to replace him. Following their death, upyrs have the right to roam the earth for 7 years. During the night, they rise from their graves and wander the world until the crowing of the roosters. Upyrs were often seen at midnight, singing, jumping, and clapping their hands in rhythm, and even emerging atop tombstone crosses, scaring passersby. Living upyrs, those who dabbled in the forces of darkness during their lifetimes, as well as those who took their own lives, eventually transform into the dreaded dead upyrs. A dead upyr is far more perilous than a living one because it possesses an insatiable thirst for blood. These upyrs infiltrate homes and attack sleeping people, especially infants. They perch on the victim's chest, press their lips to the heart, and drain the blood. Their lips become swollen and their tongues like a viper's. They create a small wound on the body, draw out the blood, and then suck the wound dry, leaving no trace behind. In the past, to safeguard themselves from a dead upyr, people would seek the assistance of a living one. The living upyr would spend the night in the house, remaining vigilant and alerting the household upon sighting his colleague. Then it was necessary to strike the upyr with an aspen stick to deter its return. Exterminating an upyr permanently is a more arduous task. To begin with, one must identify the dead upyr, locate his grave, exhume the remains, dismember the corpse, and then drive a stake through the head. It's said that after such an execution, the upyr is highly unlikely to return. Pharaohs, pharaoni, mythical characters from Ukrainian mythology. Yes, you heard that right, pharaohs aren't solely the title of ancient Egyptian monarchs, but also legendary beings from Ukrainian legends. Their appearance, however, is not what you might expect. Pharaohs resemble European mermaids. Unlike rusalkas, which we discussed in a previous episode, pharaohs have fishtails instead of legs, like typical European mermaids. However, Egyptians do play a role in this story. According to biblical accounts, when Moses led the Jewish people through the Red Sea, God parted the waters, allowing them to cross safely on the seabed. Yet when the Egyptian army pursued them, God closed the waters once more, and all the Egyptians were swallowed by the sea. This is how the mythical pharaohs, also referred to as sea people, came into existence. Since that time, pharaohs have dwelled in the sea, awaiting the end of the world. It is said that when a storm arises, they approach ships and ask, "Is the end of the world coming soon?" In response, you must tell them that the world ended yesterday. Chymarodnik, a person with extraordinary abilities, a magician. In Ukrainian mythology, wizards are known by many names: sorcerers, magicians, warlocks, hailbenders, healers, seers, and witches. It was commonly believed that they harnessed their powers from mysterious and sometimes evil forces, using them to bring harm to people. However, the term chymarodnik carried a distinct connotation. It was typically employed to describe someone who held the secrets of a specific craft or possessed knowledge and skills that transcended the comprehension of others. Ordinary people often attributed magical properties to everything they couldn't explain, including the activities of those who had achieved high mastery in their craft. Thus, entirely real individuals were often regarded as wizards, millers, blacksmiths, potters, or musicians. Unmatched masters were seen with apprehension, as people believed they had dealings with the devil and therefore posed a danger. Here's how a legend goes about one miller. Once a man traveled to a watermill and had to spend the night there. He woke up in the middle of the night from a terrible rumbling. Thinking that the miller had released water and started working, the man went to the mill and froze in fear. The water wasn't flowing, the sluices were closed, and the wheels were turning by themselves, and the mill was working. Of course, he immediately ran to the miller and told him everything. Well, don't be afraid, said the miller, go to sleep. And he went out to the mill, knocked 3 times, and said, hey buddy, sit still. What are you waving about for? And immediately, everything became quiet. Ukrainian Cossacks were frequently regarded as humorodniks due to the belief that they possessed supernatural abilities that aided them in winning battles. Legends spoke of their capacity to spend extended periods underwater, become invisible, transform into animals, particularly wolves, hypnotize foes, and instill panic and terror, causing enemies to flee the battlefield. The fern flower, a magical blossom that endows you with extraordinary magical abilities. According to legend, whoever obtains this flower can see places where treasure is hidden, understand the language of animals, make others fall in love with them, and know everything happening in the world. However, acquiring the fern flower is exceptionally challenging. To do so, one must not only find the blue spark that briefly ignites in the dark forest, but also defeat the devil himself. The fern flower is closely tied to another figure in Ukrainian mythology, Kupalo. It's said to bloom with a resounding crack and emit a marvelous radiance precisely at midnight on the night of Kupala's holiday. However, plucking the fern flower constitutes just a portion of the challenge. To do so, one must locate a fern in the evening, encircle themselves and the fern with a consecrated knife 12 times, prepare an Easter towel, sprinkle the fern with holy water, and then wait. Before midnight, evil spirits commence their assault, conjuring terrifying apparitions. They hurl branches and stones, howl, leap, groan, and weep, or conversely, endeavor to induce slumber. Exactly at the stroke of midnight, the fern comes into full bloom. At this precise moment, it must be wrapped in the towel, securely stowed in one's pocket, and a swift exit from the forest must be made. Trees will burn and fall around. All sorts of devils will fly and scream, but it's all just an illusion created by the devil. Regardless of the frightful spectacle, it is imperative never to glance back. For anyone who succumbs to temptation and looks back may either lose their sanity or meet their demise. Sometimes, under the influence of the illusion, people simply don't have time to see the flower. One legend tells of a man who found the fern near his porch. He settled down to await its blossoming, but prior to midnight, he felt an inexplicable compulsion and rose, wandering aimlessly for days before returning home. When intimidation or lulling prove futile, the devil resorts to cunning strategies to seize the fern flower. For instance, he might fabricate the illusion of mourning, luring a person into a false sense of security. In most instances, however, the fern flower ends up in the devil's possession. Whoever successfully retains the fern flower for themselves is assuredly destined for happiness and prosperity. Be sure to enable notifications to stay updated with our latest content, and help us by sharing our project with your friends and acquaintances. Your support in promoting Ukrainian mythology worldwide is greatly appreciated.